And so we're going to go back to the gentleman in the green shirt who's been waiting patiently. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'm Tracy Bemis, past president of Pulaski County Farm Bureau. I've got a comment and suggestion if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
This issue involving critical habitat and endangered species act is very important to Arkansas. There are more than 700 miles of rivers and streams in our state connected to this proposed critical habitat, 31 counties in Arkansas that could be impacted. Roughly 90% of these river miles pass through private property, a disproportionate impact on productive land. In this area, Arkansas has more than 21,000 family farms, 7.4 million acres of farmland, more than $2.9 billion worth of agricultural income, which accounts for 500,000 jobs. Farmers in these areas produce more than 78 million broiler chickens, more than 6 million laying hens, 606,000 acres of rice, 780,000 acres of soybeans, and 8.6 million acres of forest land. This represents almost half of the nation's proposed critical habitat area for these species. Last year, the USFWS issued a final rule that would implement an incremental approach to analyzing the economic impact of critical habitat designation versus a full analysis. This approach would require USFWS to only consider the direct cost to government agencies instead of considering costs to all stakeholders. This is a short-sighted approach. A process that allows a full and complete economic impact study before critical habitat areas are declared would clearly be a better approach. Our farmers, rangers, and landowners are often overloaded with unnecessary and burdensome regulations. Designating as much critical habitat without considering the economic effects in this area will no doubt compound that problem. Quite frankly, it will affect our lives and our livelihood, and that must be reflected in any evaluation of critical habitat designations. A recent economic analysis performed by the Association of Arkansas Counties determined that the minimum cost of the habitat designation in our state would be more than $20 million, 5 times the total impact of USFWS projected for Arkansas and 11 other states. We recognize that the Endangered Species Act is necessary for the protection of legitimately threatened endangered species. However, its implementation through critical habitat designation should not go without considering the true economic impacts to the human species. In other words, our lives and livelihoods. It should not be used as a mechanism for environmental, non-government organizations and law firms to essentially extort private landowners. And I won't read any more of that, but the suggestion is, excuse me, I get a little nervous.
Oh, that's okay, you do again.
Congressman Rick Crawford from Northeast Arkansas has proposed bill resolution 4319, calls for a full economic analysis, including cost to private property owners. Senator Mark Pryor's Senate Bill 2084 will mirror Crawford's bill. These bills are both in Washington, waiting for action. Pryor's still working on his bill. We just simply ask, let these bills, let them work on this, and then go from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. And Scotty, I know we're going to get to you in a second. I think this gentleman's going to be next. I want to answer your, respond to your comment, and then we've got you next. I think, are there other folks that are in the queue? You're in the queue, sir, back there? And then this gentleman with the hat here. So is that, I just want to make sure we get the order right. We're going to go to you, sir, then we'll go to Scotty, then we'll go to you, ma'am, back to the gentleman in the tie, and then to the gentleman in the hat. And thank you for your comment. As we mentioned in the slide presentation, we at this time there are impacts from the listing. Okay, so remember that there's a difference between the listing of the species, which is based on the science, which has already happened for these mussels. These mussels are protected under the Endangered Species Act. Then there's the critical habitat designation. Oops, sorry, it's falling down on me. There's the critical habitat designation that goes and identifies the areas that are important for those mussels. And it's that we are required to do an economic analysis on. So there are impacts associated with the listing, that's true. We don't have a report of that. That's not, you know, what we are required to do by law. There is legislation that's been proposed. You know, as we're part of the executive branch of the federal government, that's something that is not influenced, that we cannot legally get involved in the discussion about legislation. But I can just say that we have followed the process that we're supposed to follow with this economic analysis. I do want to say something, and if I could just talk for a minute. I worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for 15 years. I work in Atlanta now, you know, so I attend a lot of meetings. I do reports. I've become an office biologist, but I used to work in the Tennessee field office. So I worked with freshwater mussels in the Tennessee River system and the Cumberland River system, where there's a lot of declines in mussels, and we've done critical habitat designations just like the one that we're talking about here tonight. So I've been involved. I was in Chris's shoes, working on a critical habitat designation for 500 river miles in the Tennessee and Cumberland River basins, covered all the way from Virginia down to Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky. And so I've been involved in that. And then I used to work in the Alabama field office for 6 years, where I worked with endangered species issues there. And I just want to say that in my experience, granted this is my experience from the Southeast region, looking at the critical habitat designations that we've had in place for many years, and some of them that we've had more recently, I have not seen, and I like last night in Batesville and here, where, you know, the term land grab has been thrown out, or taking land. Critical habitat is identifying those areas that are important for these listed species. Agricultural activities proceed. You know, critical habitat has a minimal effect on agricultural activities. If there's going to be a dam that's constructed, that somebody proposes to construct in an area where there's critical habitat, that's a different story. That could modify a big section of critical habitat. But we're talking about agricultural activities at like Duck River in Tennessee, Clinch River in Virginia. These things have proceeded for years with critical habitat in place, and we have not seen the doomsday scenarios that I've heard here tonight. I just want to throw that out there. Now, having said that, the Delta smelt, that is a situation where there's a federal ruling. I don't know all the details. This is the species in California that was referenced earlier, and there are impacts to that. There's a lot of controversy from that particular situation. That's California. That's one of 1,400 listed species that we have in the United States, and it's a situation where there's limited water and there's other issues at play. So I just want to throw that out there because in my experience, I have not seen that. I understand the fear that folks have here. I have not seen that in my experience with the Endangered Species Act.
May I say, Paul?
Yes, sir.
Farm Bureau has many, is very active in the state. We are probably the leading stewards of our land because we own so much land in the state. The gentleman's comment about the chemicals going in the river in the 60s and 70s, there were studies that showed in the Maumee River that feeds Lake Erie in Toledo, Ohio, a lot of those big companies, yes, were putting chemicals in the river, and yes, probably farmers were putting chemicals in the river too. By working, the agencies working together, they found that buffer zones in those watersheds to help those chemicals deviate from going in the river was very positive. Farm Bureau is working through the Discovery Farms program to check water runoff, nutrient runoff, things like that, to make sure that that doesn't happen again. We are good stewards of the land. The slide that you had up there on your critical habitat slide on the dollar amounts, yes, that's for your research and things like that. We need a comparable one on the economic offset that these farmers would be if their land is where they can't farm their land. And these are just all things that we need to work together on, make sure we come to one conclusion, because I'm not saying I don't want the mussels. I'm saying that we have a larger economic offset of our base if we can't farm a lot of this land. And the one question, and I know this is going to sound very sarcastic, and I'm sorry if it comes that way, but you said one of the benefits from the mussels and stuff was the pearl. Do we get pearls from any mussels in Arkansas? And I don't know,
I've never heard of that either.
What would the economic impact be for a We saw what happened with the woodpecker in Brinkley that happened. What?
Oh,
if
yeah, the
that
Everett-billed
mussel
woodpecker.
Save the mussel, what economic impact would it be on tourism or things like that that we could be taking?
Come on, kids, let's go see the mussels.
So, I mean, our rivers and streams are important to the heart of the state. I mean, to tourism, to ag, to forestry, to
You're not answering the
hunters and
question.
fishermen like all of us. So, yeah, I mean, economics, yes, sir. So, I mean, these mussels, they're indicators of the health of the river. The fact that we have some of the best populations of rabbit's foot left range wide is an indicator of how healthy our rivers are. If you look at those red lines where rabbit's
They
foot
ate
occurs
pollution.
out east, it's been extirpated from most of those states, most of those rivers.
And some of that could be coming from our farmers making sure they have good nutrient management.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
we are working together. Thank you. I
Yes,
don't want
sir.
to take any more time. Thank you.
Okay.
Chairman, no, I think it's this gentleman.
Okay, Scotty. Or, no, sorry.
Back here,
Okay.
pleasure.
Yeah, go